Yo, what's up? My name's Semi. In this video, we're going to be taking a look at episodes 5 and episode 6 of Lord of the Mysteries, but I'm just going to quickly summarize episode 5 since I missed episode 5 last week, and then episode 6 is going to be, the usual stuff. Alright, so episode 5 begins at Zoutland Theater. Klein and Dunn attend a performance featuring Triss the Hero, sang by Papyrus? We then cut to Klein and Dunn in the audience, and what they kind of discuss is that the Antigonus notebook is being moved back to Backlund. Dunn is recovering from the spiritual shock of seeing that hanging thing in the previous episode, and Klein notes that this hanging being simultaneously matches and doesn't match the description of an evil entity known as the True Creator, worshipped by evil organizations like the Aurora Order. After the performance finishes, we then see Klein helping a woman divine her fiance's fate, since the ship he was on began returning a month ago, and he still hasn't returned. The fiance appears alive in Klein's vision. Then we cut back to the present and see the woman and the fiance, named Joyce Meyer, who has been disturbed by consistent nightmares ever since returning. Klein uses his seer abilities to take a look at Joyce's nightmares. The dream involves a barbarian throwing a baby off the ship and then immediately also throwing himself off. Klein glimpses Triss the Hero in the corner of his vision, suggesting that Triss was the true mastermind. Before Klein can get a good look at Triss, he's transported to this beautiful scene, hearing the words Hornus's Flagrea over and over again before waking up. We then see Triss being given the Sequence 7 potion recipe for his pathway from a person who seems to be his boss. Then we're back with Klein telling Dunn that Triss is most likely the culprit, but they need concrete evidence to convict someone already recognized as a hero. So Dunn requests a joint investigation with two other Beyonder organizations, the Mandated Punishers and the Machinery Hive Mind. Klein visits Tingen's underground market with Neil to get materials for protective talismans that he wants to give Benson and Melissa. While he's down there, Triss is spotted buying materials for his Sequence 7 potion in the market and gets chased by the Mandated Punishers. He escapes despite being wounded, and then Klein picks up Triss's hat to divine his location later. Klein's divination confirms Triss's whereabouts, and while they're traveling, Dunn tells Klein that according to the Mandated Punishers investigation, Triss is a Sequence 8 Beyonder on the Assassin Pathway, also called Instigator, and is affiliated with the Demoness sect, an evil organization associated with the Primordial Demoness. And some side info is that their upper echelon are all female. The Nighthawks aren't able to find Triss where Klein divined his location, so this case is sort of put to rest. Then there's a time skip and nothing too interesting happens. Klein powers up a bit, Benson and Melissa get their talismans, everyone's just chilling until the police see the deaths in Tingen quintuple in recent time and then give the case to the three Beyonder organizations. The organizations figure out that the deaths are a case of life theft, the use of death to summon a powerful curse or being. So the Nighthawks go to the altar location to destroy the altar. There's a woman that the Nighthawks engage in battle with, and they suspect that she's a Sequence 7 Beyonder since she's able to handle Dunn and Fry at the same time. And this fight was low-key insane, but to keep it concise, that's all I'm gonna say. Afterwards, Klein confirms that the woman is Triss transformed into a woman, now going by Trissy, a member of the Demoness sect. And then the episode ends with Trissy on a train being simped over by the other passengers. Alright, so now this is episode 6. We're taken to Azik, Klein's teacher, who is painting a wall of blood. Chill out, Azik, leave some for the rest of us. Some kids in Africa don't even have blood.
What?
Wait, never mind, that doesn't make any sense. Azik's shadow then freakily disperses out and the screen turns black. And then we're with Klein, who tells us that ever since returning from Lamed, Elizabeth, one of the Divination Club members that we saw in the previous episodes, has had nightmares, in which Klein saw an abandoned castle and the Wraith of a Knight. Because this Wraith was able to affect dreams, we know the Wraith is especially powerful, so a trio consisting of Dunn, Klein, and Fry go to the castle to disperse the Wraith. To do this, they use sealed artifact 30782, the mutated Sun Sacred Emblem. This sealed artifact can cause wraiths that spend 1 minute within 15 meters of the artifact to disperse, but after 6 hours can cause Beyonders to turn to idiots who only know to praise the sun. And so we enter the castle. The trio move through the castle with their guards up and encounter the Wraith, which does some freaky shit with its sword. Nah bro, this Wraith thinks he's Sung Jin Woo. Klein uses Crimson Requiem talismans to bind the Wraith, and the Wraith disperses into a bunch of bugs. To be honest, I'm surprised Klein can even land his shots here. The Wraith then materializes behind Dunn and knocks the sealed artifact out of reach. Fry, as a corpse collector, finds the Wraith's weakness as a glove on its right hand. Dunn takes a shot and the Wraith splits the bullet in two. As Klein runs to get the sealed artifact back, he takes an elbow to the face from the Wraith. Like, I mean, what did you expect was gonna happen? Anyways, it didn't matter because they were all in a dream. Dunn was actually on that to fool your enemies, you must fool your friends shit, and the dream disperses. Right as the Wraith is about to slice Dunn in two, Bro says it's been over a minute, not phased at all that he was about to get his brain brain split in half, and the wraith disperses. After the battle, Dunn says that a wraith that powerful should have been centuries old, but there are no mention of wraiths in the era of castles, which makes Dunn believe that this powerful wraith had formed recently. Klein then finds and alerts the rest of the crew of a dusty picture, but can we first talk about Dunn's microfiber cloth ass hands? Okay, that joke was kinda ass, not gonna lie. Dunn assumes that the image is the castle's first master, the first Baron of Lamed, and legend says that he just vanished. Klein recognizes this image as Azik, and now looking at it, bro has that same nasty jawline. Then the trio decide to stay a bit longer to make sure that there's no more threat, and to make sure they don't become idiots, one person stays in the castle with the artifact while the other two stay outside to rest. Klein takes the artifact and then tells us about some information. The sealed artifact is related to the sun pathway and is thought to come from Intis, but its source was never actually identified. To find out more about it, Klein goes above the gray fog because of its ability to enhance his seer abilities. And above the gray fog, Klein attempts to do a divination on the artifact. He sees a vision of the Church of the Eternal Blazing Sun, the church that possesses the sun pathway. A man goes up to this ball of golden liquid with the artifact, and the liquid interacts with it, in the process straight up deleting the man. Klein guesses that this liquid is the reason why people haven't been able to find the artifact's origin. Klein touches the golden liquid and sees this, and then the gray fog dimension begins collapsing under fire, but then it saves itself. Klein guesses that sun-looking thing that he saw was the Eternal Blazing Sun, one of the 7 gods, and decides that from now on he's not going to divine random objects out of fear that something like that will happen again. But then he starts seeing words. The words tell Klein of the recipe to the Sequence 4 Beyonder portion of the sun pathway, which is kind of crazy. Sequence 4 is insane. And immediately after he says this, Klein says, "I better find another chance to use 30782.
Oh my god, bro.
Like, bro, didn't we just say we didn't want to divine random items? One thing Klein saw still stuck with him though. The words Angel of Pure White. Whatever that means. Anyways, the castle incident has been solved, and Elizabeth should no longer have those nightmares. In the next scene, Azik has contacted Klein about finding a book on Hornesis, and Klein is a little hesitant about visiting him because of the image he found in the castle, but he goes anyways. Klein looks around the room, but Azik isn't there, and he sees the drawing that Azik made in the beginning of the episode, and majestically rips the curtain off the wall. Klein realizes that the drawing is of Lamed Castle, where Klein was earlier in the episode. Then Azik catches Klein and says that he's been having strange dreams, and when he wakes up, he finds these paintings on the wall, which is cap! Like, bro's eyes were wide open in the beginning. Azik then gives Klein a book titled Research on the Hornesis Main Peak Ruins. Klein's then like, okay, that's my cue to leave. You can read it here. Since Klein is no longer a student at the university, the book cannot leave campus. At least so Azik says. Which is also kind of silly. Anyways, Azik goes, "Sit, you seem anxious today." Nah, bro is about to get cooked. Klein gets to reading and finds an image of the mountain range. He connects it to his vision he saw in episode 5, where he kept hearing the words Hornesis over and over again. Except his vision was on a much more magnificent mountain and had a throne seemingly not meant for humans. I have no clue why Klein said this. Like, dude, it's just a pile of rocks. Why couldn't some random dude sit there? But whatever. The research says that Hornesis mountain range spans Lone and Intis. The ruins prove that an ancient nation existed long ago. Additionally, they mention the nation of Evernight, but Klein doesn't really tell us anything else about this. Furthermore, the people of that nation looked no different from humans today, so Klein can tentatively say that these people were also human. They believe that death was not the end, and that deceased family members blessed them in the Evernight. They would keep the dead next to them in their beds for 3 days, but that's it. There's no mention of how they buried the dead or anything. All of their furnishings and decorations have been preserved, so there's signs of people, but there's no physical corpse to prove their existence. They somehow just disappeared, or so people think. Azik then comments that they worshipped someone called the Ruler of the Evernight, also called the Mother of the Sky, which kind of seems like a connection to the Evernight goddess, but it's not 100%. After their talk about the Hornesis mountain range and their civilization, Azik tells Klein that he has discovered Klein's fate having erratic fluctuations, a part of his fate directly pointing to Azik. Azik, being the psychological mastermind he is, guesses that Klein has seen the castle he painted since Klein has never been so nervous, even in front of Azik, and he guesses that Klein knows his quote-unquote secrets. Okay bro, get to the point, what the fuck do you mean? Then Azik says he only wishes to find out about his past, so I guess that's the answer? Knowing that Klein recognizes his blood painting, Azik and Klein go back to visit the abandoned castle. We see images of Azik remembering his dreams and the infrastructure of the castle. He remembers his son, running around with a longsword heavier than himself. And it's pretty safe to assume that his son was the Wraith. Azik takes his son's sword, and Klein sees his skull flashing, the castle reconstructing itself, and Azik's son polishing his sword. But it wasn't real. Then a compartment opens up, seemingly giving the aura of evil spirits. In the hidden compartment is Azik's son's coffin. Azik and Klein realize that the coffin has been tampered with, meaning someone snuck in here to take something, probably causing the Wraith to appear. Anyways, Azik is pissed the fuck off, and we see spirits converging and rushing into the coffin room. We're then taken to what seems to be Azik's past, where a bunch of soldiers are burning a pile of bodies, with Azik emerging on top of it like a Plants vs. Zombies zombie, and the soldiers running away. This old lady witch person surrounded by skulls and candles begins chanting about the dead returning from something called the Pale White, and that bringing disaster. Then we see Azik popping the fuck off. Bro thinks he's playing Path of Exile, beating up these hordes of enemies, and then using this crazy fucking levitation power and smashing his enemies with these bone hands. Azik uses some skeleton ability where he controls this gigantic skeleton, and then we see what seems to be a different clip of Azik in a full suit of armor leading an army to victory, and being dubbed Grand Baron Lamed. Azik and his family are hanging out in the fields. Oh, and Klein is here watching too, I low-key forgot about him. But then one day, Azik leaves his wife and child, and that's where the dream ends and Klein wakes Azik up. Klein and Azik see that Azik's son's skull is missing, and Azik says that it happened within the last 3 months. Azik, being revealed as a corpse collector to the audience, but I don't know if Klein is privy to this, attempts to track the location of his son's head and get revenge for his son with an ability called bloodline tracing. And the ability goes directly to Klein, and we get this cool scene of the ability, but it seems that nothing the thief left behind was actually traceable. Azik says that he senses the erratic fate he told Klein about earlier, which connects Azik to Klein, which is probably the reason why the bloodline tracing went to Klein. At the end of the episode, Azik says that he has not gotten all of his memories back, but it seems that every few decades he falls into a slumber, and once he wakes up, he can't remember anything, only his name, some basic knowledge, and a piece of identification. Afterwards, he begins to dream of his past. However, in many of his dreams he had a family, a wife, and kids, but in all of them, he ended in solitude. These dreams are the fates of his reincarnations, and eventually, due to the burden of loss, he stops chasing the idea of family altogether throughout countless lives. Azik then talks about how you can't imagine the mental state of someone with no past, since they're always adrift. In that way, Klein and Azik are alike. They're both lone ships we're nowhere really to return to, except Klein as Melissa and Benson, the ghosts. Anyways, that's all for episodes 5 and 6. Hope you enjoyed. Sub and like if you did.